I can still picture my first day working on an offshore drilling platform, the massive machinery, the endless stretch of the ocean, and the close-knit bond among the crew. Over time, those platforms became like a second home to me, and the thrill of striking oil became part of who I was. Each drill and pipeline symbolized a step closer to securing my family's future, despite the long stretches of time I spent away from them. But as the years rolled on, the job's demands took their toll. The grueling hours, the constant risk, and the pressure to meet targets weighed heavily on me. Yet, with each paycheck, I reminded myself of the life I was building for my family. Little did I know, the sacrifices I made would lead to the hardest decision of my career. It had been over a year since I last slept in my own bed, and I was counting down the days until I could finally go home. But then, a massive storm started brewing, forcing me to shut down operations on the platform. It was a tough call, but with the storm's intensity, I had no other option. We had drilled 5 wells in the area, each spaced 20 miles apart, and shutting down the platforms required precise coordination. Thankfully, everything went off without a hitch, and the crew was evacuated safely. After securing the platforms, a helicopter flew the remaining team back to shore. I wasn't scheduled for any time off, so my return home would be a surprise. I was eager to see my wife, kids, and even our neighbors. Despite the demanding schedule, the job had been worth it. My salary had tripled in the last 3 years, and my skills in directional drilling made me indispensable. Especially with the recent oil boom in the U.S. 5 years ago, after getting promoted, I started planning for an early retirement. I split my income 3 ways, maxing out my 401k, investing 25% through a broker, and depositing the rest into our bank account. My wife and I agreed to focus on paying off our mortgage and saving as much as possible. Over 20 years, we built up a solid financial cushion through smart investments. My broker diversified our portfolio across company stocks, tech giants like Apple, Microsoft, and Google, and blue-chip stocks that paid regular dividends. He sent me regular updates, knowing I was often out at sea. We always filed our taxes separately, with my wife claiming the deductions for the kids. If the hurricane hit directly, no one would be allowed back on the platforms until they had passed a full inspection. I insisted on these precautions to ensure my team's safety. A crew would have to inspect the seafloor before we could restart operations, and with the hurricane moving slowly, it looked like I'd have at least 2 months off. The longer the storm stayed, the higher the reconstruction costs would climb, so I kept a close eye on the weather. I had a hand in creating these new safety protocols after a major oil company ignored our warnings and ended up paying billions in fines after a disaster. Spending a few million on prevention now saves billions in lawsuits and regulatory issues later. That company learned the hard way how governments could leverage environmental disasters to their advantage. The oil industry adapted, budgeting for long-term shutdowns and prioritizing safety above all else. My wife, Angela, and I met our neighbors, Tom and Lisa Owens, not long after we bought our house. At the time, Angela was pregnant with our first child, Dylan. We later had 2 more kids, Emma and Grace, who are nearly grown now. Tom and Lisa, who couldn't have children of their own, became like an uncle and aunt to our kids. Tom, despite being a bit of a storyteller and lacking in social graces, had a talent for sales. Lisa, in my eyes, was one of the most stunning women I'd ever seen, and if anyone could have tempted me, it would have been her. While waiting at Atlanta Airport for a flight to Chicago, I received a text from my daughter, Emma, asking me to call her. I hadn't seen her in over a year, and the growing distance from my family was making me reconsider my career. I called her immediately. "Hi, Dad," she said. "Thanks for calling back so quickly." "What's up, Peanut?" I asked, using her childhood nickname. "Okay, here goes," she said. "Dylan's in the hospital with a gunshot wound. Uncle Tom is in jail for attempted murder, and Aunt Lisa is pregnant." "Are you serious?" I asked, completely floored. "You said you wanted the facts," she replied. "But there's more you need to know before you talk to Mom." "Why's that?" I asked. "It's complicated, and there's more to the story," Emma explained. You always told us to understand all sides before making a decision. Mom might tell you a version that leaves out some details, especially since she's involved in what happened with Dylan, Tom, and Lisa." "All right, Peanut," I said. "I'm about to catch a plane to Chicago. I'll take the first flight back to Charleston in the morning. Skip school tomorrow, and I'll take a taxi home when I get there. Your mom will be at work by then." "You're coming home? That's great. Mom's in New York," Emma replied. "Macy's called all their store managers for a meeting to discuss boosting sales and cutting inventory. Our region is one of the few still turning a good profit, so they want to figure out what's working." "Has she been informed?" I asked. "No, I'm still at the hospital, waiting to hear from the doctor," Emma explained. "I called you first because I thought you should know. I don't want to involve Mom until we've talked. Let the billing department know I'll bring our insurance cards in the morning." "Thanks for texting me, Peanut. Love you. See you in the morning." After saying goodbye, I headed through security and waited for my flight. It gave me time to reflect on my family and our relationships. I had spent most of our married life working on platforms, starting from the bottom and working my way up while at sea. I really buckled down on my education, which eventually led me to where I am now. I can still recall the day I met Angela. She was speeding through the parking lot at a Safeway, hit a slick patch of ice, and ended up tapping the back of my old pickup truck. The damage was minimal, so we went inside and she bought me a coffee and a sandwich to make up for it. When she shrugged off her coat, I noticed just how striking she was, and we clicked right away. Angela gave me the push I needed to get serious about my life. Before meeting her, I was just drifting along without much direction, but she gave me a reason to turn things around. Within a month, I was back in school trying to better myself, and as our relationship deepened, so did my resolve. 8 months later, I proposed, and within 6 months, we were married. I took a job offshore, and with Angela's support, my performance improved, leading to better pay. Meanwhile, Angela pursued her own goals, earning a business degree and starting as a department manager at a JCPenney. She was a natural in retail, quickly climbing the ladder. Her hard work paid off with a store manager position in New Haven, where she transformed her store into one of the most successful in the district. Tom Owens was an independent supplier, driving his route and selling tools to auto shops and mechanics. I never knew exactly how much he made, but judging by his spending habits, he was doing just fine. Oddly, our town wasn't even part of his designated territory. Tom had a knack for knowing everyone and could track down things no one else could, often surprising his wife with pricey gifts. He was a bit of a mystery to me, easygoing yet always dealing in cash and steering clear of credit cards. The only bank account they had was in Lisa's name. Lisa, on the other hand, was a respected figure in the community. She worked as a senior editor for the local paper in eastern Kentucky and was active on several community boards. At first glance, you might wonder how we became such good friends. Tom and Lisa were African American, while Angela and I were from a long line of Irish Americans. But when our kids were young, Lisa and Tom would often take them out, spoiling them like they were their own. Tom would jokingly say they had adopted our kids, and before long, even the kids started calling him Uncle Tom. We felt truly fortunate to have them in our lives. As my plane headed home, I tried to wrap my head around everything that had happened. The news Emma shared didn't make sense, but she insisted it was all tied to our relationship with the Owens family. I had a lengthy layover in Atlanta, one of those airports where smoking is practically impossible unless you're willing to go outside and go through security again. While others vaped inside, I stepped outside to satisfy my craving with a Marlboro. Working offshore had its perks, like cheap cigarettes without all the taxes. I had stocked up on 6 cartons for this trip. I had also implemented a no-alcohol policy on the rigs, which the guys initially grumbled about, but their wives appreciated the extra money it saved. Dealing with hidden taxes that fund government overspending is one of the downsides of being American. Politicians could introduce new taxes that people quickly forget about, making understanding tax laws as tricky as understanding women, a challenge I've always struggled with. Few people realized that way back in 1822. The federal government introduced a 1% import tax to support Native American tribes, a tax that's never been repealed. I often wondered if any of that money ever made it to its intended recipients. As I stood there smoking, a familiar voice called out, "Hey, Frank! Long time no see." It was Bill, someone I hadn't seen in years. "You still smoking after all these years?" he asked. "You caught me, Bill," I replied with a grin. "For an old guy like me, you're looking pretty good. Where are you headed?" "Back to New Haven. That's where I live with my wife and kids," I said. "Got sent home because of the weather out on the rigs." "You're still doing that? When are you going to give up that roughneck life and get a real job?" Bill joked. "I'm thinking about retiring soon," I said. "Maybe sooner than you think. I'm planning to find something that keeps me home at night." Angela's going to be surprised. "Did you end up marrying Angela Parker?" Bill asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, I met her when I was working on the rigs down in Texas. She was in business school at the time." "Surprised to hear that," Bill said. "My younger sister and Angela were best friends in high school. Back then, they were only interested in black guys. My sister ended up marrying one, but he left her after their second kid. It was rough for a while, but now she's a lawyer and doing well." We chatted for a few minutes, catching up on who was still around from our school days and what they were up to. I learned he was married with 3 kids now. Finally, I was on the last leg of my trip home, eager to talk to my daughter. The news Emma had shared was on my mind the whole way back. The taxi dropped me off, and I carried my bags to the front door. Emma hugged me tightly, clearly worn out and emotional. After some quick hellos, we got down to the details. "Dad," Emma started, "over the last couple of years, I've noticed some changes in Mom's behavior. At first I thought it was just because of her promotion at the New Haven store. But then one Friday night when I was out with my boyfriend, I saw her having a romantic dinner with Uncle Tom. I was shocked, but I let her keep talking. It was odd because Lisa usually works late on Fridays, and Mom was supposed to be working too. So my boyfriend and I started looking into it. We found out that Uncle Tom would always leave his truck at Macy's, and Mom would meet him there. They'd drive off together, sitting close like a couple. I didn't like what I was hearing, but I trusted Emma's judgment. I listened intently as Emma shared the story. "I told Dylan," she continued, "and he decided to dig deeper with a couple of his friends. They found out that Uncle Tom was renting an apartment where he secretly met up with his lover, Mom. Dylan couldn't believe it at first, but then he broke the news to Aunt Lisa. I squeezed her hand and said, 'I believe you, Emma. Keep going.' Aunt Lisa was crushed and turned to Dylan for comfort. That's when they started their relationship," Emma explained. "Last night, Dylan told me everything. It's been going on for over a year, and now Lisa's pregnant with his child. Uncle Tom can't have kids because he had mumps when he was a kid." I poured myself a strong drink, realizing I was going to need it. "How long have your mother and Uncle Tom been involved?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "About 18 months, Emma said softly. "They were already seeing each other the last time you were home." "What exactly led to Dylan getting shot?" I asked, trying to piece everything together. "Mom didn't show up to meet Uncle Tom, so he went home and found Lisa and Dylan together. In the heat of the argument, Uncle Tom pulled out a gun and accidentally shot Dylan." "What a nightmare," I sighed. "I need to hear Dylan's side of things, but not right now. We'll handle the hospital paperwork later today and then find a good lawyer for the divorce. When is your mom coming back home?" I asked. "She's supposed to be back on Saturday morning," Emma replied. "What's your plan?" she asked, clearly worried. "I'm going to rent a car and stay at a motel. I can't stay here," I told her. "When I get back with the car, we'll take care of a few things. I want you to call your mom tonight with your phone on speaker so I can record the conversation for my attorney." Emma started crying, understanding that her mother's actions had forced my hand. Through her tears, she said, "I've been dreading this day, Dad. I hoped it would somehow go away, but it just kept getting worse. I want to live with you, Dad." "If that's what you want, I'll make it happen," I promised her. "I'm here for at least 2 months. so I have time to find a new place and maybe a new job. But for now, let's keep it under wraps that I'm back." "You really mean it, don't you?" she asked, searching my eyes for reassurance. "Yes, but it might mean switching schools," I replied. Emma hugged me tighter than ever before. She didn't want to leave my side, so she came with me when the taxi arrived. Before we left, we called her school to inform them she wouldn't be attending. Just as we were getting into the taxi, I received a text from Lisa that said, "We need to talk." I responded, "I know. I'll reach out once I've taken care of a few things. My daughter needs me right now." Initially, I was surprised that Lisa was home, but after everything that happened yesterday, it made sense. I rented a small, inconspicuous car, something my wife would never expect since I've always been a pickup guy. We left Columbus and checked into a no-frills motel in a town far enough away to keep a low profile. After settling in, we went to the local hospital to handle the insurance details. Over lunch, Dylan called Emma, and we learned that Lisa was with him and that he knew I was back. Emma told him to keep that under wraps for now since we planned to break the news to his mom that evening. Next, we stopped by a real estate office to look at some small businesses that were up for sale, but nothing really caught my eye. I asked the agent to keep me updated on new listings and made plans to check out a few houses on Friday. Back at the motel, I called my supervisor to inform him of the situation, explaining that after 20 years, I might need to resign because my daughter, who's still a minor, wanted to live with me. I also arranged a meeting with a lawyer for Monday. Checking my accounts, I saw that we had $50,000 in our joint savings and another $250,000 in personal savings. With the house paid off, the divorce seemed relatively straightforward, just dividing up the assets and funds. "Peanut, I'll be back soon," I told Emma. "I'm going to have a talk with Lisa to get her side of the story." Lisa let me in as soon as I knocked, and I could see the exhaustion etched on her face. "I'm so sorry, Frank," she said. "You shouldn't have come home to this mess. Want a drink while we talk?" "Sure, I could use one after today," I replied. As she poured the drinks, I asked her to start from the beginning. "I was at work when Dylan asked to see me privately," Lisa began. "I thought he was planning something special for our anniversary, but instead he told me Angela and Tom were having an affair. I didn't believe it until he showed me. He drove me to Tom's apartment, and what we saw through the window left no doubt. Tom and your wife were together. I was crushed." She showed me some photos on her phone that confirmed the timeline both Lisa and Emma had given me. "Lisa, could you send me those pictures? I'll need them for the divorce," I asked. Lisa's eyes widened when I mentioned that Angela had only dated African-American men in high school. "Maybe those touches over the years weren't as innocent as we thought," she said. "You never know," I replied. "But how did you and Dylan end up together?" "He reminds me a lot of you, Frank," Lisa said. "He was there for me, gave me the strength I needed. One night after we'd had too much wine, I kissed him and he kissed me back. That kiss held more love than I'd felt in years. Our bond grew stronger, and about 6 months ago, we crossed the line. It wasn't out of revenge, it just happened." I understood. My job and the long absences had created a distance between Angela and me. Even though we were married, we had become strangers. Each time I came home, we had to rebuild our connection, only for me to leave again for months on end. It was one of the main reasons I was seriously considering leaving my job for good. Lisa waited anxiously for my response, and after a deep breath I finally said, "Thank you for being honest with me. I'll let Dylan decide what's best for both of you. He's been independent for a while now, and I'll support whatever the two of you choose. Just so you know, the timeline and photos have been confirmed." "Thank you, Frank," Lisa replied, tears filling her eyes. "Dylan said you'd handle it this way." Lisa then explained that Tom had been served with divorce papers, which triggered his reaction. He was under a court order to stay away from her, and now the shooting made more sense. Tom had always had a temper, and he must have lost it when he found Lisa with Dylan. I knew Tom carried a gun for protection because of his work. "Lisa, for the next few days it's important that people think I'm out of town," I said. "That's why I rented a car. Emma has already told me she wants to live with me. I left with what I needed. The truth from Lisa, and proof that Tom and Angela's affair began long before Dylan got involved. Back at the motel, I shared everything with Emma. "That makes sense, Dad," Emma said, nodding as she connected the dots. "Dylan has always acted older than his age. The photos and everything he's told me back it up. He's always been into older women." "I guess I'm partly responsible," I admitted. "With me gone so much, he took on the role of the man of the house. I was barely older than him when he was born. Before talking to Lisa, I realized that no matter what I felt, Dylan was going to make his own choices. It's their lives to live." "Dad, should I call Mom and tell her what's going on?" Emma asked. "First, find an app that can record the call," I suggested. Emma quickly searched for and tested a few apps before finding one that worked. We both downloaded it. After 3 rings, Angela answered, and Emma put the call on speaker. "Mom, I need a note for missing school today," Emma said. "Why did you miss school? Are you feeling okay?" Angela asked, concerned. "No, I was at the hospital with Dylan last night and was too tired to go to school," Emma explained. "What happened to Dylan? Will he be okay?" Angela asked, her voice rising with worry. "He was shot in the shoulder, point blank," Emma said flatly. "What? How did that happen? Tell me everything," Angela demanded. "It happened because you weren't where you usually are on Wednesday afternoons," Emma said, her tone sharp. "What do you mean by that? I was at work," Angela replied, her voice trembling, knowing full well it wasn't true. "No, Mom, you were at 644 Morgan Avenue, apartment 4 with Uncle Tom," Emma said, letting the truth out. The silence from Angela was deafening. After a long pause, she finally asked, "How long have you known?" "I found out by accident early on," Emma confessed. "I saw you having dinner with Uncle Tom. Dylan investigated and found your little hideaway, even took Lisa there to catch you both in the act. The pictures are pretty explicit." I could hear Angela starting to cry, and then she said, "I'm coming home on Saturday. We need to talk before your father gets back." "Mom, there's more. Uncle Tom was served divorce papers at your little hideaway last Wednesday. He went home furious, determined to save his marriage while still seeing you. He didn't realize that his actions had pushed Lisa and Dylan together," Emma said, glancing at me. I nodded, showing her I agreed with the way she was handling this. "Uncle Tom violated the court order, went back to his old house, and found Lisa and Dylan together," Emma continued. "In his rage, he grabbed his gun and shot Dylan. So, Mom, do I tell Dad, or do you want him to hear about it from the news tomorrow?" "Give me a few minutes to think, and I'll call him myself," Angela said, trying to regain her composure. "It's better if I handle this." "Okay, Mom," Emma replied. "By the way, you're going to be a grandmother. Lisa is 3 months pregnant, and Dylan is the father. Also, Lisa plans to serve you with papers when you get back." Angela broke down, but I felt her reaction was well-deserved after everything she had done. Emma waited for her to respond, and when none came, she ended the call. I poured 2 drinks, one for Emma and one for myself. I added some ice and soda to mine, leaving hers neat. Setting it down in front of her, I said, "Let's have a drink together, because you handled this better than most adults would. I'm proud of you, Peanut." We waited for Angela's call, finishing our drinks, when my phone finally rang. I let it go to voicemail. After pouring another round, I played the message on speaker. All Angela said was, "Call me when you get a chance. Uncle Tom accidentally shot Dylan, and we need to talk." "Dad, let's check the news online before you respond," Emma suggested. She pulled out her laptop, and we saw the story splashed across the front page. The headline read, "Local Man Shoots Wife's Lover," and it detailed everything, exposing all our connections. The biggest shock was finding out that Tom Owens wasn't his real name. He was actually Raymond John Smith, with a record for petty theft and an outstanding warrant for drug possession with intent to distribute. His fingerprints had finally exposed his true identity. I contacted the authorities and mentioned Tom's work van, urging them to get a warrant to search it. When they asked why, I said, "Because no one's ever seen him actually use it for work." Next, I tracked down Gus Charles on social media and found his contact information. When I called, his wife answered. I explained that I had met Gus recently and needed the name of his sister Ashley's ex-husband, who had seemingly vanished. His name is Raymond John Smith, she said, her voice tinged with bitterness. He's been dodging child support for over 16 years. Well, he's currently behind bars in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, under the alias Tom Owens, I informed her. Are you kidding me? She exclaimed, shocked. I wish I were. He's also been involved in an affair with my wife, Angela Parker, I added. Oh my God, Ashley will be stunned. Can I give her your number? She asked. Please do, I replied. My soon-to-be ex-wife is coming back on Saturday. Both Emma and I were reeling from the revelations. I texted Lisa to see if she was home so we could talk. Dad, Mom knew who he really was all along, didn't she? Emma asked, her voice laced with disbelief. What else have they been hiding? I have no idea, but it feels like they were trying to relive some kind of twisted fantasy, I said. Who knows what else they were up to? We sat in silence, trying to process everything. Just when we thought we couldn't be more shocked, there was a knock at the door. Emma answered it, and I made a strong drink for Lisa, handing it to her as she stepped into the kitchen. We showed her the updated news article, and she was visibly shaken. Emma had recorded her conversation with Angela, and I played it for Lisa. There's a good chance your marriage to Tom isn't even legal, I said bluntly. You should have your attorney look into it. I've been at the hospital all day, Lisa replied, her voice trembling. I was just about to head home when I got your message. There's no way he's getting out on bail. It gets worse, I added. He has 2 grown kids, a daughter and a son. His ex-wife was Angela's best friend back in high school. The disbelief on Lisa's face was clear. They knew each other from the start, Lisa said, tears beginning to fall. If he had kids, why couldn't I get pregnant? He probably had a vasectomy before you met, I suggested. That would explain it. And as Lisa and Emma talked, I fell silent, my gut telling me there was still more to uncover. Ladies, I think we need to search our homes thoroughly, I suggested. There's something we're missing. I wouldn't be surprised if Angela was involved in something shady with Tom. With his background, who knows what they were hiding? It sounds crazy, Lisa said, shaking her head. But he did take that van out every day and stayed away overnight a lot. Then why would Angela keep his secrets? Did you ever see bills or receipts for his purchases? I asked. Tom always claimed the company handled everything, Lisa replied, frowning. Did you ever see any bank statements or wire transfers? I asked, pressing further. No, but I have access to his email. We could check it, she suggested. We went over to her house, and after logging into his computer, I searched through his emails. We discovered that Tom had several hidden email accounts linked to his main one, indicating he was covering something up. Lisa, you need to contact the police first thing in the morning and give them access to these accounts, I said. I'm heading home to search for anything hidden in my house. I want to be sure nothing illegal is stashed there. I'll do the same. What should I do if I find anything suspicious? Lisa asked, her voice wavering. Call me and we'll figure it out together, I said firmly. We need to protect ourselves. Dad, do you really think Mom would have let Tom hide stuff in our home? Emma asked, her eyes wide. Given their relationship, I wouldn't put anything past them, I said. Start looking in places you'd never think to check. Back home, I grabbed a flashlight and headed straight for the attic. After moving the rental car, I climbed up and found 5 large garbage bags hidden in a corner. When I dropped the first bag, Emma rushed over. Move it out of the way, I said. There are 4 more. The second bag split open, revealing bundles of $20 bills. My first thought was whether Lisa's house might be hiding drugs. After dragging down all 5 bags, I found another, flatter bag, which turned out to be Tom's ledger. Emma, go tell Lisa what we've uncovered while I check these bags, I instructed. They were back in 5 minutes. The 5 bags were packed with cash, and the 6th bag contained Tom's detailed ledger. Frank, can you search my place too? Lisa asked, clearly shaken. Right after I call the cops, I replied. I called the police, and they sent a patrol car over. Then I went to Lisa's house, where I discovered a chest full of cocaine stashed in her attic. I placed Tom's ledger with it and called the police again, this time requesting a detective. It took over 3 hours for the police to collect the cash and drugs. We had to recount everything from the shooting to our latest discoveries. Before leaving, the detective mentioned they would be taking Angela into custody for questioning when she returned on Saturday. The money can't be linked to anything at the moment, the detective said. It will be counted, recorded, and secured as found money voluntarily turned in by Mr. Parker. Thank you, officer, I replied. What about the drugs found at my neighbor's house? Lisa asked, her voice tense. Since Tom Owens lived there, and you turned it in with her help, you won't be charged, but he will face additional charges, the detective explained. Will you be coming back with a search warrant tomorrow? Lisa asked, her nerves showing. Give me your husband's email and password, the detective said. We'll check it directly. If you find any small amounts of drugs, flush them. Most of what Tom had is likely in that van, which we're towing for a full search. After the police left, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover. We were getting closer to the truth, but something told me that the worst was yet to come. I could use something stronger than coffee, I admitted as Lisa secured her house and joined us. Emma, clearly worried, asked, Are you going to tell Mom what's really happening? Better to let the detectives handle it, I replied. I'll finish searching both houses tomorrow while you're at school. Thanks, Frank. I really appreciate it, Lisa said, sounding drained. Lisa, I need you to come with me to the car rental place tomorrow, I continued. I'm not comfortable leaving Emma alone. Can I stay here tonight? Lisa asked, her voice filled with fatigue. Of course. You can sleep in Dylan's old room, I said without hesitation. Around midnight, we were jolted awake by police sirens. Someone had tried to break into Lisa's house, but an undercover car watching our homes had caught them. By 5 a.m. I was outside, nursing a cup of coffee and a cigarette when I called Angela. She answered immediately. Frank, it's chaos here. Tom shot Dylan by accident, but the doctors say he'll recover. The police are holding Tom while they complete their investigation. Have you spoken to Lisa? No, Emma and I have been at the hospital, I replied. I'll talk to her today. Any idea when you'll be home? We're eager to see you. We're keeping an eye on the weather. If we need to evacuate, I could be home sooner than expected, she replied. Are you serious? I asked, a bit surprised. Yeah, there's a hurricane coming. If we have to leave, I'm heading straight home. Promise to call me if that happens so I can prepare, Angela said. Okay, I responded. Talk to you later. From that brief exchange, it was clear she wasn't ready to admit the truth, and probably never would. I realized that whatever feelings she once had for me were long gone. It was time to move forward with the divorce, without any lingering guilt. After dropping Emma off at school, Lisa followed me to return the rental car. We then picked up my luggage and checked out of the hotel. I suggested she get Dylan's apartment key and consider staying there temporarily. I spent the afternoon looking at properties with a real estate agent and decided on a newly built house in a quiet, up-and-coming neighborhood. I made a cash offer, including a large deposit, and requested a 5-year warranty to speed up the closing process. Afterward, I bought new locks and texted Lisa and Emma with an update. While searching my house, I didn't find any drugs, but I did uncover bearer bonds worth $10,000 each. The news later reported that the police had found items in our homes that might be connected to the shooting, which seemed to ease any suspicions about us. As I changed the locks and updated the security codes, I stumbled upon expensive jewelry I never knew Angela owned. Finally, I returned to the attic, this time with a more powerful light, and discovered even more bags of cash hidden in a dark corner. I immediately called the detective using the card he had given me and informed him of my latest find. Before they arrived, I set aside a few bundles of cash from each bag for safekeeping and left the rest where I'd found it. It was becoming clear that Tom had likely been dealing drugs for years. The detective arrived and took all 20 bags of cash, shaking his head in disbelief. That's when it hit me. I should have left the ledger with the cash to link everything together. Officer, is it possible Tom has been involved in drug dealing for the entire 20 years we've been neighbors? I asked. Given that he's been living under an alias for even longer, it's very possible, he replied. There are countless cases where people live alongside criminals without ever realizing it. I'm especially curious to question your wife about her involvement and how long this has been going on." "One more thing," I added. "Tom, well, Raymond, as we now know him, was married to my wife's high school best friend before he married Lisa. His ex-wife, Ashley, might be flying in on Saturday to confirm everything." The detective smiled just as Lisa pulled up. "This case just keeps getting more intriguing," he said. "Does his current wife know about all this?" "Yes, and I'm about to thoroughly search her house," I replied. "After last night's break-in attempt, we decided it was necessary." "I'll be ready for another call if anything else comes up," the detective grinned. "I'm interviewing Tom again today. We found cocaine hidden in a false floor of his truck. He's not getting out of this." Lisa joined us, looking weary. "Officer, my lawyer will be contacting you about my husband's true identity. He's pushing to annul our marriage immediately." After the detective left, we thoroughly searched Lisa's house, flushing anything that seemed suspicious. Lisa packed her belongings and moved into Dylan's apartment for safety. We also found some bearer bonds, which she took with her. I told her I had made an offer on a newly built house and planned to use the bonds to pay for it if the offer was accepted. "Frank, do you think Angela was in on this with him, or was she just another victim?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. "It's hard to say," I replied. "We've had each other's house keys for years. Tom could have hidden things in our homes while we were away. What surprises me most is that he didn't try to legitimize his savings." "My daughter and I want to see Dylan together," I said. "He's recovering slowly, but he and Lisa are planning to move in together to see if they can make it work, despite the age difference." "That sounds like a mature and well-thought-out plan," I said, trying to sound supportive. "Thanks, Dad," Dylan replied. "I appreciate everything you've done for Lisa. Now that I understand what you've been dealing with, I'm amazed at how you're handling all this. Son, I may not like what your mother did, but I wasn't there for her when she needed me. My job kept me away, and loneliness led her to seek comfort elsewhere. If I ever have another relationship, I'll have to change how I live." Emma looked at me, her eyes searching. "You don't hate her for what she's done?" "I want to, but I can't," I said, shaking my head. "I put work first and left raising you both to her. When you grew up, she had no one giving her the attention she needed. I'm sad, but I can't hate her or condemn her. Besides, she may face bigger problems." "Like what?" Dylan asked, concerned. "If the police connect her to Tom's drug dealing, she could end up in prison too," I said. "It's surprising how often people miss what's right in front of them." My words left both of my children silent, the weight of the truth sinking in. I received word that my house offer had been accepted. Excited, I headed to the broker's office, using some of the bearer bonds for the deposit. Just as I was finishing up, I got a text message. "Can we meet? I'm Gus's sister, Ashley." I quickly replied, "Where are you?" She responded, "At the airport." I texted back, "I'll be there in 15 minutes. "You got an excellent price on your new home," the broker remarked as I wrapped up the paperwork. "I'm surprised they accepted it so quickly." "That's why I asked if any others had sold yet," I said. "Nothing sparks interest like a sold sign." After finishing up, I headed straight to the airport. As soon as I walked in, I spotted Ashley. The terminal was nearly empty, with the last flight to St. Louis having just departed. Ashley was striking, with brown hair that framed her face perfectly, and her simple blue jeans and casual outfit suggested someone confident and comfortable in her own skin. She approached me with a warm smile. "You look just like the photo Gus sent me. Nice to meet you, Mr. Parker." "Call me Frank," I replied, shaking her hand. We made our way to the airport restaurant and sat down for an early lunch. As we got to know each other, she noticed my bare ring finger. I explained that after discovering my wife's affair, I had no reason to wear it anymore. I learned that after her divorce, Ashley had reverted to her maiden name. As we ate, I noticed passengers disembarking from a newly arrived flight. From our window seat, we could see them walking through the gate. When Angela appeared, I waved to get her attention. Ashley turned to see who I was waving at, and Angela froze, her face turning pale as she spotted us together. Clearly, she hadn't been keeping up with the local news and was completely blindsided by the situation. We watched as a detective approached Angela, showed her his badge, and escorted her to collect her luggage. "She didn't know you were in town, did she?" Ashley asked. "No, we kept it from her," I said. "Whatever she was planning, it's over now. She's about to find out about the cash, pills, and ledger found in our homes." "Can I handle your divorce case?" Ashley asked, a steely determination in her voice. "It would be satisfying to take her down, especially since she and my ex were involved. There are a lot of questions that need answers." "Can you manage it while traveling back and forth?" I asked. "I run my own divorce firm from home," she explained. "Plus, I'll be here dealing with my deadbeat ex anyway." I smiled. "Looks like we have a deal. If you've got a printer, we can get started today." We loaded Angela's luggage into my truck, and I told Ashley her ex-husband was in the county jail. She wanted to confront him, so I drove her there and waited. About an hour later, she returned, visibly shaken but composed. "He was shocked to see me," Ashley said. "He asked how I found him, and I told him it was thanks to you. I also mentioned that the police had seized the pills, money, and ledger." His face went white. I called the detective to update him. He said they would get a handwriting comparison to link Angela to the pills, though not necessarily to the cash, as the ledger contained a list of suppliers and clients. "So my soon-to-be ex might have been in on it all along," I said, feeling a mix of anger and relief. "That'll make the divorce easier. She'll need her share for legal fees." "Yes," the detective replied. "We're charging her as an accessory today, so she won't get a bail hearing until at least Monday." We returned to my place to start drafting the divorce petition. On the way, I explained how we had handled our finances throughout the marriage. "Smart move," Ashley said. "With separate savings accounts, we can argue that it wasn't marital property." Back at the house, she began working on the divorce petition while I brewed coffee and sent her the images Lisa had provided. I told her I didn't want the house due to everything that had happened there. "Can Angela afford to buy you out?" Ashley asked. "Based on how we split the household funds, she should be able to," I replied. After a couple of hours, we were ready to print the documents. I gave her the access code, and we printed and sorted the copies to file with the county court on Monday. Later, my daughter returned home after spending time with friends. There was an immediate connection between her and Ashley. "Emma, I'd like you to meet Ashley Lynn Charles," I said, introducing them. "Her family still lives in Dutchtown. Ashley, this is my daughter Emma, who will be moving in with me next week once we've bought the furniture." Emma's eyes lit up with excitement as she hugged me tightly. "What did you buy?" she asked eagerly. "A newly built house with 3 bedrooms, an open floor plan, a 2-car garage, an unfinished basement, and a raised patio deck," I replied. "Is there anything wrong with it?" she asked, still cautious. "It's not landscaped yet," I said, "but I'm planning to look into adding a pool after closing on Monday." Emma's eyes sparkled. She'd been asking for a pool for years, but I'd never done it because I didn't want to ruin our existing landscaping. Since it was nearly dinner time, I asked where they wanted to eat. Both chose Ruby Tuesday for the salad bar. After dinner, we went to Enterprise so Ashley could rent a car. Emma invited her to join us on Sunday to shop for furniture, and Ashley readily agreed. On Monday, I was in the courtroom as charges were read against Tom Owens and my wife. Tom was denied bail, and Angela's bail was set at $500,000. Ashley served her divorce papers on my behalf, and then served her ex-husband for back support. As we left, holding hands, I knew that Tom and Angela had both noticed us earlier that day. I finalized the purchase of my new house by dropping off the remaining bearer bonds. Ashley had already filed the divorce papers and paid the court fees by 4 p.m. Later, Ashley found a letter on her rental car at her parents' place. It was a ransom note. They were holding Emma and demanded everything I hadn't turned over to the police. I told Ashley to reply that I would meet them at Trail of Tears State Park at midnight, providing a specific location. Back home, I prepared for what was coming. I packed small propane containers, a welding torch, an old tent, and my crossbow into my truck. When I arrived at the park, I set up the tent and, under cover of darkness, rigged a trap at the cliffside viewing area. I loosened the bolts on the railing and tied a bag filled with paper to it, making it appear valuable. When Earl, a known associate of Tom's, showed up, I confronted him with my crossbow. "Make sure Emma gets back safely, and I'll hand over the bag," I demanded. Earl hesitated. "What if I don't agree?" "I'll shoot you and hunt down your brothers," I replied coldly. Earl's nervousness was apparent, and watching him sweat was oddly satisfying. He quickly realized the crossbow was loaded with 3 arrows, ready to fire. "Tom thought you'd gone soft," Earl muttered. "He's planning to escape and needed the bearer bonds to get him and your wife out of town." "So, you're in the ledger too, huh?" I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "How do you know about the ledger?" Earl asked, visibly shaken. "I gave it to the cops," I answered. "It's only a matter of time before they come for you all. If Emma's unharmed, you might want to use what's in that bag to disappear." Panicking, Earl made another call, instructing his brothers to drop Emma off and flee. He knew how desperate the situation had become. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Ashley, confirming that Emma had arrived safely and was unharmed. I switched off the lights and slipped back into the shadows. As Earl leaned over the railing to grab the bag, the unsecured bolts gave way and he plunged over the edge. I calmly returned to my tent and slept through the night. It took 2 weeks for authorities to find Earl's body, and when Tom Owens got the news, he didn't take it well. Early Tuesday morning, I drove to Ashley's parents' place. Emma ran out to greet me, and they invited me in for breakfast. During the meal, I learned that the county sheriff was retiring, and Ashley's father, George, had significant influence in the local Democratic Party. Over breakfast, I mentioned considering a run for sheriff, and George asked if I'd be willing to start the state qualification courses. "I agreed," I said, watching the pride in Emma's eyes as she spoke up. "One thing I know about my dad, when he sets his mind to something, he gets it done," she said confidently. After breakfast, I handed Emma my phone and had her listen to the recorded conversation with her mother. It was eye-opening to see their reactions. "Mom was never going to be honest with you, was she?" Emma asked. "No," I replied, shaking my head. "I'm starting to wonder if she got Tom back into the drug trade using my money." Everyone was surprised by my revelation, including myself. We all agreed that keeping what happened since Ashley found the note a secret was the best course of action. "Things didn't go the way Tom and Angela planned," I said. With that, I called the detective to inform him that Tom might try to escape in the next few days. The detective remarked that I would have made a good cop with my knack for uncovering information. On our way back to Cape Girardeau, my phone rang. It was Angela. "I'll be out on bail in 2 hours," she said. "Can I get access to the house?" Ashley and Emma looked at me, curious about how I would respond. "The house is yours this afternoon," I said. "My lawyer will bring your car to the Love Nest and hand you the keys. Emma and I will have taken what we want from the house. The rest we'll collect while you're at work this week." I hung up, feeling a sense of finality. "Ashley, most of the new furniture is being delivered today. They'll set it up. Can you supervise where everything should go?" "I'd love to," she replied with a smile. "The appliance dealer should be there by 10, and the furniture companies will arrive later." We dropped Ashley off first so she could see the new house. Both she and Emma loved the open floor plan and the spacious layout. Emma chose her bedroom, thrilled that it had its own bathroom and a walk-in closet. "Dad, should we take pots, pans, and basic stuff from the old house?" Emma asked. I thought for a moment. "No, let's start fresh. Once we pack our personal items and bring them here, you and Ashley can go shopping for what we need." "Most of the windows have built-in blinds," Ashley noted. "That'll give you privacy until you get curtains." As we were leaving, Ashley and I said our goodbyes when Dylan called out, "Dad!" He and Lisa had just stepped out of the house across the street. I introduced everyone, and it was interesting to see Lisa and Ashley sizing each other up. Despite their different skin tones, they had similar builds, which likely explained my initial interest in Ashley. Before heading back to pack our clothes, I stopped at the bank to open a new checking account. I transferred funds from savings, got new debit cards for Emma and me, paid off my credit card, and had my paycheck rerouted. It was time to start anew. Packing up the house was surprisingly quick. We managed to load everything into the truck in just a couple of hours. I carefully hid the remaining bearer bonds at the bottom of one of the boxes and climbed into the attic to retrieve the bundles of cash I'd stashed away. Before we left, I reminded Emma to change all her passwords, especially since she was taking her laptop with her. After unloading the wardrobe boxes at the new place, the ladies headed out to pick up a few essentials while I stayed behind to clear out the old furniture, piling it in the front yard for a bonfire later. I called AT&T to set up the internet, and just as I finished, the ladies returned with a truckload of new items. The delivery drivers were just leaving, and we got to work setting up the master bedroom and Emma's room, organizing the living and family rooms, and putting the kitchen table and chairs in place. We had the basics ready to start our new life. All we needed now was the internet to get the TV up and running, but for the time being, the laptop and some free Wi-Fi would do. Once the truck was unloaded, Ashley and I drove Angela's car over to her. I waited outside while Ashley went in. About an hour later, she returned, looking a little more frustrated than when she'd left. "Did you find out anything useful?" I asked. "Not much," Ashley replied. "Their relationship started after my marriage ended. Angela was planning to divorce you once Emma finished school. They've been together for about 6 years. Raymond's been dealing drugs the whole time you've known him. Angela claims she didn't know what was in your house, but I don't buy it. I recorded the conversation thanks to Emma syncing her phone with mine." "Should we send it to the detective?" I asked. "Definitely," Ashley said with a smirk. Then, with a playful glint in her eye, she added, "So, Frank, are we going to keep dancing around the question, or are we actually going to see where this thing between us goes?" "I thought we were already on that path," I replied, a smile tugging at my lips. "Even your parents seem to have noticed something." Ashley moved closer, lowering her voice. "Emma suggested KFC or fish and chips for dinner. What's your vote?" "KFC sounds perfect," I said, and we headed back to the new place with a bucket of fried chicken. When we arrived, I found that Emma had been busy. She'd washed the new sheets, put away groceries, and even had the dishwasher running. I was impressed. She'd also picked up some sour mash and soda, so we all had a drink with dinner. After we ate, I headed to the master bedroom to unpack. The ladies followed, helping to make the bed, arrange towels, and set up a small trash can and alarm clock. They even picked out matching lamps for the nightstands. Emma had chosen my shower soap and shampoo, which I appreciated. I carried the empty boxes out to the burn pile, added a few more from the kitchen, and checked out the setup. The new coffee maker, toaster, and microwave were already in place. The house was really coming together. The ladies moved on to finish setting up Emma's room while I lit the burn pile. As I watched the flames rise into the night sky, I got a call from Angela. "It's all gone," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "Where is it?" "Call the detective and ask," I replied with a chuckle. "You knew," she accused, anger bubbling up. "How did you get Emma back?" "Ask Earl or his brothers if they're still around," I said before hanging up. Shortly after, Dylan called. "Dad, we bought the house across the street. Mom called, but I told her off. She wasn't happy, so be ready for her to blame you." We talked for a bit, and he had questions about Lisa and Ashley's relationship. I told him that they should focus on the fact that they were both manipulated by the same man and let them work it out together. After a quick smoke, I checked on the fire, which had burned down to embers, and went back inside. The washer was running, and Emma approached me to say goodnight. "I'll lock up after I drive Ashley home," I said, noticing the puzzled look on my daughter's face. Just then Ashley came downstairs wearing a new nightgown and robe. "Oh, that one, I said, suddenly realizing why Emma had that look. Deciding not to make things awkward, I went to shave and shower while Ashley's clothes were in the wash. Later, a knock on my door woke me up. Emma needed a ride to school. I dressed quickly and met her at the door, where she grinned at me. "Dad, "You look happier than I've seen you in years," she said. "I'm happy for you." After dropping her off, I promised to pick her up later. It was refreshing to relax at home for the first time since leaving the oil rigs, with no immediate tasks except spending time with Ashley, which I did a lot of. At&T arrived around lunchtime to install the internet, and shortly after, Ashley's parents showed up with her rental car and some of her clothes. A photographer came by to take a professional picture for my campaign. George Charles, Ashley's father, expected to have all the signatures needed to register my run for sheriff by the end of the week. I handed him $5,000 in cash for the campaign. Ashley took her mother on a tour of the new house, and I discovered she'd already started adding her personal touches here and there. When we were picking out furniture, George asked me, "Did I ever stand a chance?" "When she came home Saturday night," he said, "I was surprised when she told me, 'I met the man I'm going to spend the rest of my life with.'" After Monday's incident, she said, "Dad, Frank's the one who took control away from those who were holding Emma." When Emma showed up unharmed at 1 a.m., she said she didn't know what happened, but whoever had her got scared and dropped her off quickly. "That was Ed Ryan and his brothers," I explained. "They've always been a problem. When I confronted him with a loaded crossbow, I gave him one chance to let Emma go or face the consequences. He hesitated, so I told him to call his brothers and tell them I was on my way. I can honestly say he was still alive when I left." "And now?" George asked, raising an eyebrow. "Time will tell," I said with a shrug. George smiled and said, "Old school, Frank, welcome to the family. I'd be proud to have a grandson from you." His words confirmed that we shared the same values, tough and principled, like the Missouri red clay. 6 months later, we were all gathered, waiting for the election results. My parents, Ashley's parents, Lisa and Dylan, who had recently married, were taking turns holding my newborn grandson. Angela and Tom had been sentenced to life without parole, and my divorce was finalized. My former employer had granted me early retirement, and I just deposited over $6 million returned to me by the police. Emma finally got her swimming pool, and Ashley's business was thriving, with 4 staff members working from our home's basement. I knelt in front of Ashley before joining our supporters and asked, "Will you marry me?" She smiled and said yes, and I slid the ring on her finger just as the news declared me the winner of the election. George was beaming with pride, not only because of our engagement, but also because there was a new sheriff in town.